welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm here with Chris Balestrini and Julianne Staehli. Staehli or Staehli?
Staehli, that's perfect, yeah.
Okay, Staehli. All right. Because you hear both. Every time you watch a broadcast, it's different each time. Anyway, so Chris, you're a 2:19 marathoner. And Julianne, you just got the world standard for the indoor 3K until it was postponed until next year. So I hope that world standard still applies.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Anyway, and I hope it actually goes ahead next year. But let's get into some questions and then we can have an awesome conversation. So let's start with some rapid fire. What's your most memorable race? Who wants to start?
I'll go for it. Most memorable is still probably OFSA from 2012. I finished my last year in grade 12 with the steeplechase, and it was in Brockville. And I remember the race from start to finish, and we had the semis and then the finals. And it was just a great way to finish, winning in my final year. And my parents had come up, and it was just exciting before like heading off to university. And yeah, I'll just always remember that race. And I didn't really know kind of the, I guess, caliber of like OFSA and like coaches coming out and watching and that sort of thing. But it was kind of a good step towards going to university. So, and then, yeah, least memorable or race I'd want to forget would be 2016 cross country university in Quebec City. I ran out of my mind. I don't know really what my race plan was going in, but yeah, it was a slow kind of like deceleration into the finish. I started off really hot, and yeah, I don't know what got into me, but that would be a race I'd want to forget.
Fade from the front.
Fade from the front, yeah.
You got to go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's to kind of continue things on there. That's your least favorite race. That's probably my most memorable race. Was that like I guess uSports championship in Quebec City. A lot because it was kind of my my return to running. I had run a lot in high school, and then switched pretty much completely over to cycling, and then a little bit of triathlon. And that was kind of the first race that it all came together. And I think a big thing for me was it was like our team coming together. So I was on the Western Mustangs team, and we were not ranked high. We were ranked like fourth at the OUA championship, but we had this like kind of like belief from the beginning of the year that we were like this underdog squad that was just going to come up, and we ended up winning the OUA title and then coming third in that race. And yeah, that was kind of. That was easily the most memorable, just because when I look back on race feelings, that was, I guess you could say, the race that had the most feels at the end. Was pretty special with the guys.
How about your least? How about the one you want to forget?
I think the one I want to forget is probably. I was kind of like bouncing between a couple different races. There's a couple I'd like to forget, but my first marathon, Rotterdam. 2019, and I think it's just because it's probably the darkest the darkest area that I've ever been while on 2 feet was on the streets of Rotterdam. I probably missed some bottles. I went out a little too fast maybe, and I was in a dark place there for what felt like forever, but it was probably a stretch of about 10K from 30 to 40. And yeah, so it was nice because it was the one you want to forget, but I think it's easy to kind of forget the pain of the marathon after you've done the marathon when you sign up for the next one. And I think you have to kind of forget that feeling just so you can go into the next one with kind of clear eyes.
So I have a similar experience for my first marathon. I was injured going in, and I did PEI, and they're like, "Oh, it's flat," and so I was great, injured for like 8 weeks, and so go out, and the last 10K was the worst experience I've ever had, and I said, "I'm never doing another one of these again," and then turned around 10 months later, did another one. Anyway, this is about you, not about me. So, what is your favorite workout?
I realize this is supposed to be rapid fire, so I'll try
That's
and
okay.
keep it quick.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Favorite workout, I think for me would be like a 12 by 400 on the track or something. Very like even, short recovery, like 100 meters in between, at like 3K or like, 3K to 5K pace, on a hot summer day. That would be my favorite workout.
The life of a 1,500-meter runner.
Yeah, I've paced her for some of those workouts and they're hard. 100 meters is not a lot of rest. Yeah, my favorite workout is on the other end of the spectrum. It was in the build up for Toronto, and it was a 4 by 5K with 1K jog rest, and just trying to get faster on each one. Basically, start at what you think is going to be marathon pace and kind of work down from there. And that's always it's a hard one. When I did it, I was out on like a country road, it was pretty rolling. Didn't have anyone with me, just hit a bottle in the bush and was out there for a couple hours. So those are the grinder miles.
Yeah, I'd still rather that over 400s. Okay, what is your least favorite workout?
Least favorite for me would be anything a lot longer. Tempos are okay, but I think if it's on the track, either longer or really short, so like a 3 by 800 would not be my favorite, just very lactic. Or if it was like 5 by 1200 or something like that, where it's just long intervals and you kind of get lost in your own head. So kind of an in-between.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah. For me, it's anything that is short in duration. And I don't mean like short in duration, like short in intervals. Like I love 400s too, but if it's only like, let's say 6 by 400 or 8 by 400 and you have to do them all out kind of thing. That's like my least favorite workout. I always feel like I get the most out of myself when part of like the workout helps kind of get you to the point of exhaustion. Whereas maybe that's just because I'm soft with fast stuff, but and indoor tracks. I hate the indoor track. I would rather do anything than run on an indoor track.
We sound fairly similar. The worst thing for me are taper workouts. I find they're the hardest because you're not supposed to be like 100%, and you're trying to judge your effort. And anyway, you just end up screwed.
And the taper workouts, that you always go into them mentally thinking it's like it's going to feel good, and sometimes the pace doesn't feel as good as you think it's going to be, and it's just then you're kind of like, oh, maybe I'm not fit.
Especially when you can't.
That's not a good feeling. Like
a 1K, and then
yeah.
Okay, so favorite shoe. I think I know the answer to this one, but we'll do it anyway. What's your favorite shoe?
My so the New Balance 880, just for like an everyday training shoe. I really like that one. Yeah.
What about racing shoe?
Racing shoe, the 5000, the LD 5000 for the split.
Okay.
Yeah.
Track runner.
Yep.
My favorite training shoe is probably the 1080.
That's
like
the big one, right? That's the huge.
That's well, there's the more, which is even more foam than the 1080. But I switch shoes often. I've tried every shoe in the New Balance lineup. But for training, the 1080 is always the go-to for me. And then for racing, the Fuel Cell TC is kind of been my go-to. And then when the RC comes out, I had kind of also a little prototype shoe that is going to have the foam that the RC is going to have in it. It has that in it, and it's a nice lightweight foam that I think is going to be awesome. So can't wait till that one comes out in full force.
Nice. When's that supposed to come out?
Not sure. I think the current situation has kind of pushed everything back a little bit. I know like there was supposed to be some kind of like select models coming out like early spring to kind of have them ready for Olympics for the 4-month rule. but now that obviously might be pushed back a little bit.
All right. So last of the rapid fires, if you could, if you could do another Olympic sport, what would it be?
Oh shoot, I forgot to think about that.
I can answer while you're thinking.
Okay.
All right.
For me, it'd be rock climbing. That's coming in Tokyo 2021 here. I wish I was better at rock climbing. I love rock climbing, but I'm not very good, and it's something that I would love to do at a higher level.
Distance runner's upper body. That's what.
Yeah.
I would maybe choose a winter sport. Yeah, maybe like, I don't know, snowboarding or something like that, fun, or like a team sport. Just, yeah, not that I'm necessarily good, but like a soccer or something like that would be cool at the Olympics.
Yeah, my dream sport is to get cross country into the Olympics, because I think that would be awesome. Because it's actually, people don't really consider it a team sport, but I certainly think it is. Okay.
We definitely like push this to get that into the winter. I was listening to a podcast today with Dathan Ritzenhein.
Yeah.
And he was talking about kind of like he wishes that it was in back in the day, and how it would have felt like a missed opportunity. But
yeah. Okay. So some longer answer questions. Well, about the same maybe. I built this as kind of like Canada's running couple, and I think a lot of people like that and bought into it. So to get my e-talk question out of the way, can you talk about how you met? I assume it's through running. And then about your running relationship. We don't need to know the other details, but the running relationship.
you want to start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't get into any trouble.
Yeah, good idea.
Keep it short and sweet. Well, we both Chris ran for Western and I ran for Queens for cross country. And then we both kind of transferred to like an assistant coaching position. And then in 2017, the National uSports Championships were in Victoria, and both of the teams have made it, Western and Queens, and there was a alumni relay race or something. So we had decided that we'd make this team and go to this race. And so we went out for drinks the night before to strategize for the race, which we didn't come up with any strategy. And then we ended up not making the race the next day. We left a little bit too late and we couldn't find the start location. So
I don't even know if this race even existed. Julianne recruited me. She said, "Hey Chris, we need I need you on this OUA All-Star team for this alumni 5K." And then we get there and like there's a couple people scattered around and they say the race has already happened, and then she's like, "Oh, we may as well just do a workout together now."
Yeah. Really, I just needed a workout. Anyway, so we did a workout around Beaver Lake in Victoria, and then from there, here we are.
Kind of kept it going after Victoria, and yeah.
Nice. Well, and so in terms of the running relationship, Chris, obviously you pace, but do you do lots of your runs together, lots of workouts? When I was telling my parents about, oh yeah, I'm interviewing Chris and Julianne, they're like, oh, how do they do workouts together? And I was like, well, they're kind of on different ends of the spectrum in terms of distance. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
I would say we probably run between 3 and 5 runs together a week.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, typically all the kind of like easy mileage, recovery mileage that we do around the same pace, which is when we go out, we probably run, I don't know, but somewhere between 4:15 and 4:30 a kilometer. And then we're kind of just chatting away and so yeah, I would say we probably get in a good 3 to 5 runs together. Sometimes we'll do workouts either at the same time, more often at the same time, where we'll kind of warm up together and then we'll each kind of do our own thing, and then we'll go our separate ways because some of my workouts take a little longer.
I definitely benefit from the workout aspect of it, just because if Chris is doing something at his like 10K pace, like I can hop in and usually like it'll work out in terms of like I'm doing like 3K work or something. So I'm more fortunate in terms of pacing that way, but especially on the track, if the guys are doing long intervals and just to be able to like hop on the back, and even if I'm doing like 400s or whatever it is, it's really helpful. And I think especially when the guys are running and it's easy for them, then like it makes me feel calm as well. And I'm just like, okay, they're easy running, I'm easy running, like it's good.
At the start of the relationship, I would try to pace her in workouts between my workout days, and I realized that she's too fast for me to do that. I was not recovering at all, and between the days, it was like, okay, I'm going to run here and make it seem like it's an easy effort, but really your heart rate's like 185. But
so you're both
trying to
sponsored
impress her at the start.
You're both sponsored by New Balance. Do you ever mix your clothes up?
He wears my socks. That's one thing. I notice every now and again I run low on socks and they just look too small, and then all of a sudden I realize those are my socks. But our clothes, not necessarily. No, he doesn't wear sports bras.
That's good. That's good.
Just steal my sweaters.
Yeah.
Well, that seems par for the course, but okay, that's probably a good thing. Anyway, I won't go any further. So let's talk about the BU Valentine Invitational. So you that was like, so I was watching that on Flow Track. I was probably like the only Canadian who actually watches like the BU Flow Track and whatever. So you smashed your personal best. I forget how much you took off it. It was huge. And you came within 1 second of the Canadian indoor 3K record. This qualified you for the World Indoors, as we said earlier. And then Chris and so I actually messaged Chris after to say congrats or whatever. And he said you hadn't gotten into Millrose or a couple other things. And then as soon as I look a few days later and you're on the Millrose start list, where you finished second, right? Second at Millrose? Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about this, like those two races and your awesome spring? And then what do you attribute that breakout performance to?
Yeah, there's a lot of good questions. This indoor season wasn't really meant to be an all-out kind of like star performance sort of season. It was really just meant to kind of like blend into the outdoors, and really the focus being 5K on the outdoor track as soon as spring hit, run as close as I can to standard. That was like a goal. But I came into the winter season and I knew I was fit and I had a good fall and following like the summer previous too as well. But I was training well. I was doing a lot of workouts on the indoor track. And then I did kind of like just a double workout at the Western Invite in January. So I had a measure of where I was at. But when I went to Boston, the goal was sub 9. And I knew going into the race it was possible. But when the gun went, Jenna Westaway was pacing me. And the first K we're already at 2:55, and then I just kind of shut off my mind and I was like, just go with it. Like, this is what you're doing. You're in the front. Like, just go with the pace. And I remember coming around and I wasn't really aware in terms of like adding up the laps, but obviously the splits are pretty easy. You can look at 5 laps, 10 laps, and then coming into the final. And I remember looking at the clock as I was coming into the finish. I was like, I think I missed a lot. Like just something didn't seem right. Like when I saw 8:47, I was like, there's no way. Like that's not really like, it just didn't even really click, I guess, until I finished and I sat down and then I realized I was like, okay, like that wasn't exactly the goal, but it was surpassed that. Yeah. So
I hate when that happens.
But it really set kind of a new bar. And I think when I talked to my coach, Steve, and we kind of looked at that performance, then we kind of reshuffled things a little bit, and our goals kind of became more just with more doors being open. And obviously Millrose was a really big race to get into that, which was really exciting. I think my biggest takeaway from the season is going to Millrose and performing there, and probably one of the biggest races that I've run so far in my career. I think running 8:49, coming a very close second to Ali Ostrander, I think it just confirmed that like I am an 8:47 runner. I could do this. This wasn't just a one-off at Boston, because when I finished that performance, I think it just kind of, everybody was a little bit like, where did that come from? But as you said, like I would attribute it to like just years of putting in the work, and no specific workout or anything like that I did in that specific build-up, but I think just like every season, every summer, every year coming for the last probably 5 years, just building on that fitness and then being sharp and ready to go. I think it just came together.
I can tell you one specific workout she did right before that 8:47 that made me tell all the guys and girls that would listen, I was like, she's going to break 8:50. And she did 14 by 400 with 100 meters jog rest. So like her favorite workout, obviously. And I paced her for half of them or something as the end of my workout. And it was on the indoor flat track. And like with such short rest, she was just clicking off like 70s and 71s. Like it was nothing. And I was like, okay, like this is a workout that you're definitely breaking 9 and probably going sub 850 here. But so
Chris says he always calls my times, but I never remember that. I just listen to my coach and I do what he says. But Chris is
recency bias too.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Millrose for a second. I've never been to the Armory, so explain kind of that atmosphere at Millrose. And as you said, it was probably the biggest race you've run in terms of like, it's on NBC. You can't get much bigger than that. So just a little bit about the atmosphere, and then what was kind of that post-race reaction where they're like, this girl a Canadian, so they probably didn't like that very much, but a Canadian came out of nowhere in most of their minds and finished second. So can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, it was really exciting. Like just having Chris come along for the trip, I think was really big in terms of my
Did they pay for him?
Yeah.
They did?
No.
Oh, they're full of money. They should be paying for everybody.
Yeah. Lucky I made a little prize money to help subsidize our costs out there. But it just going into a race like that, you have to kind of think like it's big and there's lots of people there and the competition's different. But I just felt so fortunate to be there and have a bib and be on the start line. And I think I just went into the whole season with the mentality of like, I have nothing to lose. Like, I'm just going to go in and run the absolute best I can. And not necessarily being an underdog. I think people knew like I had a good time coming in, but I was just there and I just really enjoyed like every minute of that experience. And luckily Jess O'Connell and Regan Yee were there from Canada as well. So I got to warm up with them, and Chris was holding our stuff in the warm up area. And if anyone has been to the Armory, it is the most close quarter track. It's amazing for spectators, but for the athletes, you have like 100-meter strip to warm up on. Like there's a loop outside around the parking lot, basically. So it's not ideal in terms of like getting your perfect pre-race in, but I think I was just like happy to be there and happy to have both Justin, Regan, and Chris. So and then once I got into the race, like I knew a few names and I knew who the favorites were, and the announcements were going on, but I was just kind of in my own head, and I knew where Chris was on the track as well, so I was kind of listening to hear him. And then the gun went and the pacer went out. I didn't go right with her, and from there I just kind of controlled most of the race. And then then with like 300 to go, I just thought like I could win this. And then last 100 meters, Allie just timed it perfectly and just came up on my shoulder. And I think it was too late to react at that point, but I'll never forget that moment. And I think I finished every workout and every run now just thinking like, don't let that happen. Like just push, because you never know when you're that close. And I always think like, could I have just like leaned a little bit more? And the photos just, it's hard to think about that, but I was really happy nonetheless. And being so close to the Canadian record again and just proving that I can run that time gave me so much confidence. And although World Indoors was canceled and the rest of the outdoor season, I just think that that's going to be huge going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's never a bad thing when you just get beaten by Ali Ostrander either. Like she's a pretty good athlete. So we'll get to you, Chris, in a second, but sorry. The Olympic conversation. How many people have come up to you after and asked you what I'm about to ask now? Did the 5,000 meters for the Olympics enter your head as soon as you ran 8:47?
Chris is going to kill me when I say this. The indoor season, I was focused really just on like 1,500 mile, 3K, kind of get my legs going. I never really ran a good indoor 5K before. And I was like, Peyton Jordan, going to California, we're going to run a fast 5. Outdoor season's coming. Like I just wanted some practice on the 400 track. And but someone actually kind of came out to me after Boston. They're just like, you need to run a 5K right now. And like, you need to get on the track. And I was so happy with where I was. And I thought like, you know, I'm not going to overstep this, and I don't want a bad experience running a 5K. And I was a little bit sick throughout the indoor season as well. So even going into Millrose, kind of a side story. I had a kind of a week of like being under the weather, and I just knew finishing out the season, it had gone so well. In hindsight, it would have been really cool to try and hit a 5K time. Although looking ahead now, I think as soon as I get the opportunity to get on an outdoor track and run a 5, I'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good, because I think you're certainly in that conversation now with, and yeah, it vaulted you there very quickly. And there's a good select group of Canadian women who are kind of in that conversation, but I think you certainly are there and thereabouts, and have a good shot at running that time. So fingers crossed for you. And now we can talk to Chris a little bit here. So kind of similarly, you've jumped onto the Canadian scene in terms of road racing in the last couple of years with a whole bunch of 105s for the half marathon, a whole bunch of them. So I run with Jeff Archer, and he says that guy's eventually going to break 105. He's run so many of them. So you've also you had a good placing at the Canadian 10K championships, where you were in there right until the end, and the Canadian half marathon championships, where I think you finished third, right? I think you finished third.
Yeah, I was third there.
All right. So, and then there's a couple more things. Your team won the Canadian XC crown, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And you ran 2:19 at Toronto. So, similarly, can you speak to your development a little bit? And then I guess secondary, why do you pin on the numbers so much? Because you race more than any other Canadian male, I think.
Yeah, pretty close. I'll tell you one thing though, I would trade all those 105s for 103. I don't know. I think, well, first of all, a big part of kind of why I'm even running is because of Julianne. I looked back at and kind of just looked at the training I did before we had started dating, and it was just under, so in 2017, I was just under 40 kilometers a week. And if you follow my Strava now, you'll see that I'm quite a bit over that.
Significantly.
Yeah, so I had never run 100 miles in a week. That was not a thing that I did or wanted to do. And then I started running. I started running more and more and more. And now I've run a couple of 200K weeks, and I'm usually averaging around 185 kind of thing. And I think that was kind of the big turning point, was just running more. So before that, I was like, I had pretty good success. I'd run like 112, 31 minutes for 10K kind of thing. And then as soon as I started kind of training more and more, I brought those down to 105 and 29:20 for 10K. And yeah, so I think that's a big part of it. The reason why I race so much, I think that kind of comes from my cycling background.
That makes sense.
It wasn't unique to kind of race 30 or 40 races in a year cycling, and those would be like the kind of the legitimate, you enter races, and then you'd have your Tuesday night crits and your Thursday night time trials. So you ended up racing like quite a bit cycling, and you didn't always. I think runners these days, they feel like they have to be in top form and they have to peak, and if they don't run close to their PB, then there's going to be some kind of disappointment, whether it's internal or from some external source. And I don't necessarily see that as the case. I think it's always good. I think you learn something about yourself pretty much every time you step on a start line, whether you're in shape to PB or you're tapered to PB. But I think you also learn stuff about yourself when you're not in that shape or you're not tapered. And I don't regret any of the races that I run. I love racing. I think that's kind of the biggest thing is whether it's last year I raced a 1500 in July, and then I raced the Toronto Waterfront Marathon in October. You know, it's if I can get on a start line and I'm healthy, which, like, knock on wood, I have been for a couple of years, then I'm going to kind of give it everything I've got. And we honestly have such a great group with the Backroads Bandits group and London Western Track and Field Club, that it makes training easy, because you have that social component that kind of ties you all together. And I don't know, that and honestly, like, the online community, like with Strava and everything. I think it's, Julianne disagrees, she's not on Strava, but I really think that it's a positive force kind of in my training. I've had Strava since 2009 though, so it's everyone's kind of just jumped on this bandwagon recently in the last couple of years. But back in the cycling days, there were only 3 KOMs in all of London, or crowns to get in the cycling world, and now you probably hit 100 segments on each run. So
yeah,
it's a little bit different, but I think, yeah, just lots of miles, and racing is fun. Is the short answer for that.
So first of all, Julianne, you need to get on Strava, because if it's not on Strava, it doesn't count. And or at least that's what I've been told. I agree on the Strava thing, but I talked to Mike Woods earlier this week, and he actually said something really similar to what you said about racing. He said that a lot of people say, yeah, you have to be in tip-top shape because people don't like losing races. But he said it's actually just go out and race for the fun of it, and it's actually, for all the things you said, you're learning something about yourself every time.
Yeah, in cycling, it's so, like, since it's less impact too, you really can race into shape. So I think I've kind of translated that to running, and race into shape.
Yeah. Anyway, so I admire it. I wish I could race that much, but I always tend to get injured. So just even training. Anyway, let's move on to uSports. So we talked a little bit about the uSports earlier, and you both said you met via the uSports, or whatever it was called, CIS, and now it's uSports. So Chris, you competed for Western, as we talked about, and Julianne for Queens. So can you speak to the importance of that collegiate system in Canada, and how it kind of impacted, in a positive or negative way, because some people say it's negative, your development as a runner?
You start. Yeah.
I did my whole kind of master's thesis on this, so I can just read you the whole document if you'd like.
Great.
I
have time.
I think, yeah, coming through the Canadian system, it really was like our approach, even entering into uSports, was CIS, but we were both kind of runners coming out of high school, but I never really considered the NCAA. Nor did Chris, really, in terms of running a little bit. But I think being at a Canadian school, staying within the province, being relatively close to home, were all kind of factors that played in. Queens and Western for different reasons. But I think in terms of development, yeah, but overall, like, just the experience, and I think Canadian running has really kind of improved over the last, I would say, 5-10 years. There have been a lot more strong distance runners coming out of university, and with the change in distances, I did 5K going in my first year, and then now it's hopefully going to be 8 and 8 next year. But it's changing, and I think we both had positive experiences, and I think running now and still loving running, and I'm coached still by my university coach, Steve Boyd. So it was really a positive experience. And I don't look back on that and kind of wonder, like, how would I have done if I went to the States, or what would have changed. I think it was really only positive. And besides my final race, I guess, in university for cross country, but it's just a different system, and you're kind of more of the big fish in a small pond is, I guess, the best analogy in terms of that. And NCAA, although there's other schools too around the world too, it's just not those two systems. But I think it is special that there's that team component. Cross country, that's really the only time in your running career that you're going to have a real team environment with people all your same age, competing every season, and you have the funding, and it's a little more cushioned than kind of the post-collegiate life. We're both very fortunate to still have support in that way, but I think university is really special, and I think anyone, like, I only wish positive experiences, whether you go to the States or you stay in Canada or whatever, because I think it really does shape you as a runner and as a person, and kind of post-collegiately as well.
Awesome. Chris, anything to add?
Yeah, I think we like in the same system, we couldn't have had well, we had very different experiences being on two different teams. In my early years, I was not focused on running quite as much as Julianne was. I was nowhere near as good. Still, I'm not, but but definitely then. So I would say I was in it for more the social side of things at the start.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, but it wasn't until my like later years that we really felt like we had like a strong bond and team, and it kind of came through. But it also really came through when we started taking things a little bit more seriously. Like the year that Julianne won uSports in cross country at OUAs that year, I was 55th in like a 37-minute 10K or something like that, and far off where I would want to be now. But then I was happy to be on the team, you know, and enjoying the experiences with everyone. So yeah, but overall, it really, I think if like I was really fortunate to have Bob Viggers, Guy Schultz, Janet Takahashi, coach at Western. They really they made me want to run after university, and didn't kind of squeeze the rag dry and kind of get what they could out of me. They knew that I liked sport, and that was enough for them, and it eventually ended up fostering a love for running that has made me grow once leaving that small scene.
Awesome. That's good. Those are answers I want to hear. I was telling on another previous one of these, I was saying I've applied to law school, and I'm hoping to get in, first of all. That's the biggest challenge, but then make one of the teams. So fingers crossed, we'll see. So it's good that you both have positive experiences, because it makes me feel more like I want to do it. So last question for me, can you, and we've talked about this again already a little bit, but can you talk about the importance of training in a team environment, and why it's important for all runners of all abilities to do so? So Chris, you said you trained with Western and now with the Backroads Bandits, and Julianne, now you trained with the Queens group, a pretty good Queens group, and your current group. So can you talk a little bit about that dynamic and how it's benefited you?
Yeah. Want me to start? Sure. I think it really, like, a lot of people kind of see a drop off in the camaraderie after you leave either high school running or university or college running, and you kind of lose that sense of community, and a lot of people pick that up kind of later in life with run groups and things like that. But I think what's really important is where I'm really fortunate is that we had this post-collegiate group that formed essentially right away when I had left school, and we have such a great group running from Backroads, and such a high caliber group running from Backroads and London Western, that it's great, because I don't know, you can get out there on a Sunday morning, and you know that you don't have to, well, now you do have to run by yourself, but before, you know that if even if you're going 35K on a Sunday on a long run, you would have guys and girls with you. Like we have Brian here on the chat. Like, Brian would be out there pushing the pace on a 35K run. So if you were dogging it, maybe you wouldn't let that happen today. And it keeps you honest, it keeps you accountable, and and it brings the sense of camaraderie that really kind of pushes you to push on, but also to get to that next level, because you see, like, good competition breeds better competition, and when you have a good group of people working together towards a common goal, you really, when one person gets there, you no longer see it as a barrier, and now it's like, okay, where can we go from here? How can we work together? And if you're working out with someone who's pushing those boundaries, then it's no longer a mental barrier for you, and you think, okay, now I can push those boundaries. And I think that's really key, because it's easy to look up to someone who is running a 2:05 marathon or a 2:06 marathon, and you don't really see how they got there, let's say. But when it's your teammates, and more importantly, when it's your friends and what feels like family, it's really your family now. When you see them along the way and you see them pushing the boundaries, then it really helps you out.
Yeah, I think a big point in what Chris said is, in terms of ability and level, it looks different when you're trying to reach kind of the, I guess, highest levels in sport, and you're really pushing to make teams and that sort of thing. Is it really thins out when you get to those competitive kind of just competitive running groups and that sort of thing. So to find people that are around your ability and around your level, and especially for the guys, I think is really special, because they have that camaraderie and similar times, and even across the distances as well. I think being able to work together. And then back to your point too, with working out and living with Chris, I definitely benefit from that, and having guys around and having him even with pacing workouts. And then I'm fortunate enough as well, just with some of the Western women and Alex Lucky and Kate Curran, and like just having people that are around your level, I think is really big. And no matter if you're recreational or elite, I think having groups and having people, and even if it's just your long runs, every day, like I do enjoy just having a run, by yourself with music and that sort of thing as well. But
she's sick of me, basically.
Yeah, I do think it is, the days that are hard are a lot easier when you have people. And I think that's true for anyone at any level as well. So, but yeah, it is at elite level, unless you're with pro groups and big teams and that sort of thing, it can be hard to find that kind of like dynamic. And as well, like just being coached too by Steve still in Kingston. It is like you're coordinating workouts, you're fitting in runs and that sort of thing too. So I do more on my own than I would have when I was at Queen's, for sure. But it's kind of a give and take a little bit as well. And wherever like we can hop in or hop on the bike or do that kind of thing, it really helps for sure.
I think we largely discount kind of the community or sense of community that we see in online presence. Mm-hmm. Like obviously like Strava, but also just on social media and everything. It really kind of, when you see people kind of metaphorically coming together, not physically right now, but if it's kind of special when you know someone's working towards a goal and they hit it, like whether it be a 3-hour marathon and they've gone out and they've time trialed it in this day and age and they've run 2:58. Like that's exciting to see, like that's a personal barrier. And at the end of the day, we're all just running to see how fast we can run, which is kind of, it's beautiful in a way.
Beautiful, exactly.
But it makes everyone accountable to themselves and to their own goals. And ultimately we want to see how quickly we can stop the clock. And that's pretty special.
Yeah. Okay, speaking about stopping the clock, David messaged a question in the chat, and he wants to know if you're worried about our team for the quarantine, that damn hill challenge. He says, we have an Olympian on our team, which is true, but we also have me, so we cancel each other out. Anyway.
Well,
he wants some trash talk to promote his race, I think.
We're shaking in our boots over here in London. You should see our chat. You want to see trash talk? You should just take a little scroll through that. No, we're excited. We want to go toe to toe. We're ready to fight for that marathon relay title, and we have some pretty quick guys. At the end of the day, it's gonna be a battle, but we're gonna show up on the start line and be ready to go.
I think you're going to beat us by like 25 minutes. But anyway, that's yeah. So if people are interested in what we're talking about, I need to plug it because otherwise they're going to get mad at me. You got to go to thatdamnhill.ca or .com, one of the two, and you can look up. They have a free virtual race you can do, and you can do some solo events or a team marathon, which is what Chris and I were just bantering about. So. We'll go to Jared's question. He asks a more serious question. Do you two focus more on pace or effort? And then what do you think is more important? So when you're doing your workouts?
I'm more pace, and Chris is definitely effort, I would say. I guess it depends where you're at in your season, but I either have my watch on or I'm very specific about markings on the road and loops and times. And I love precision. I love time. I love everything about running that makes it nutty. A track is great. My coach says, like, let's not hop on the track because we don't want to get like burnt out. But in my mind, it gives me a sense of peace. If I know my split, I know my time, I'm coming around, it's 400. Like, don't give me any arbitrary like gravel road loop that I have absolutely no idea where the 1K mark is. Chris is animal at pacing in any kind of conditions, hilly, gravel, all that kind of stuff.
She'll literally, if there's a workout that is kind of meant to be, or you think it would be mean to be on pace, like let's say it was 2-minute intervals. So you're doing 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, let's say. It's meant to be on effort. She'll put a line on the road, measure how far she gets in that 2K, put another line on it, and then run back and make sure she hits that distance each time. So really, it's not effort based at all. It's pretty calculated. But yeah, I'm the opposite. I like to just go out and whatever pace feels better, whether it's an easy run or if it's a hard run. Sometimes I'll pick a hilly route on purpose and kind of get off that mental grind of I have to hit this certain time, because then when things aren't going well, or when you're not hitting those times, you're thinking, oh, it's not going well, but it could be wind, it could be conditions, like there's a lot of things. So I think if you go on pace and you kind of have you have to have a general idea of what you want to hit or where you want to be, but I think it kind of builds resilience for if things aren't going exactly to plan in a race, then you can look back on those times in training and know, okay, like, yeah, it's not going exactly to the pace now, but I know that I can come back here and feel better later.
So you should be on Strava, clearly, because you like all these numbers and data. Sorry, I'm gonna keep plugging this. And so
I've been trying for years.
Yeah. Follow-up question: do you think it's a testament to the different distances you kind of train for? So the half marathon versus the marathon is certainly a more tempo, efforty, floopy kind of training versus like hitting splits is so much more important when you're training for 1500 5K. Do you think that's the case?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think too, like, although I like distance and time and very specific measurements, I guess, Chris is the numbers guy. So if it comes down to figuring out what my pace is going to be on LC Parent Loop, he's got it figured out. So, and I don't typically care so much about total mileage for the week. It's more just kind of, I add it up and send it to Steve and whatever, 120, 130, whatever it is. But Chris, he more trains in terms of like distance, and he knows every day what it's going to be cumulative for the end of the week. So it's more of like that marathon, getting in the volume. For me, it's like more the quality over the quantity. Similar to the science, we have the qualitative and the quantitative. It's kind of,
if you're on Strava and you're doing workouts, the analyst in me has probably looked at those workouts and looked at every component of them, and even if we're not we don't follow each other, I'm probably looking at your workouts. I know we follow each other, Steven, but for the people watching, I'm a little crazy when it comes to numbers.
All good. I am a history, political science major, so I'm certainly less about the numbers. So Brian has his hand up, so I'll throw it over to Brian to ask a question.
Hey guys, I know what you're talking about in terms of community. The group we got with the Bandits just reminds me of stuff I used to do in high school. A guy, Andy, and I used to run together all the time, and it's amazing how you look out after each other and you share each other's accomplishments. So I share your point on that together. And I know we've had a fair number of runs together, but I've never asked what do both of you look up to as idols or running idols?
Good question. I was going to ask that one, but I decided that I had too many.
Yeah, can we go first? For me, this is easy, and something that's near and dear to my heart. The 70s and 80s, Brian. The 70s and 80s. Those were the real tough training years. Like you go out and it doesn't matter who you are, you're running 100-mile weeks, 120-mile weeks and up, and you're doing intervals and 20 by 400, 30 by 400, and K repeats and hills, and real tough training, racing all the time, kind of. So guys like Steve Jones, Bill Rogers, Frank Shorter, Jerry Lindgren. Those are kind of my people I look up to most, and I listened to a podcast from Steve Jones today, and like every word was just like perfectly in sync with my stride, and I was like, oh man. I really like that kind of era of running, because I really think it encapsulates. I think we're a little soft with training these days, and we have all these methods and all these tools, and at the end of the day, just run a lot, run some hard, and recover every so often, and you're going to see improvements. And I think that's what kind of like the mantra of the 70s and 80s was, just grind it out and race.
Maybe that's why you like to race a lot. Because those guys do. My dad was a runner in that time or in that era, and he was the same way. Like even a middle packer guy, they were running like 100 miles a week.
So just a follow up for Julianne, if you were on Strava, you wouldn't have to send it to Steve; he'd see it.
Yeah. So Julianne, who are your running idols?
Oh man, this is tough. I never really had like a specific idol, like or someone specifically that I'm like looking up to, but I think just seeing other women in Canada breaking barriers, breaking records all the time, just and at any level, really, I feel like I get inspired from pretty much anything. Like even just going out on the bike path in London and running, and if I see like a mom who's pregnant and she's like going with her stroller, like that gives me inspiration. Like it really, like I see it in everything. And even at like high school level or university, I think there's just people kind of breaking their own barriers and breaking their own personal bests, and across sports too. Like I get inspiration from many different things, but in terms of one specific person or that sort of thing, not really. I have a lot of respect for other distance runners who are doing the same thing and competing at the highest levels, and just because I have an understanding of kind of what that means. And I think, but in terms of idolizing, not anyone specifically, but I feel inspired when I see people breaking their own bests.
That's a very good answer. That was very well thought out. So Michelle asks, do you have a favorite workout that you kind of hate, but you love when you finished it?
Hi, Michelle. Ooh, you go first.
Do you have one? One that I kind of hate but love when I finished it is I'd say it's kind of, people have referred to it as kind of the Kenyan style fartlek, just 1 minute on, 1 minute off. And sometimes in marathon training, I'd go up to 80 minutes of this. So I guess 40 by 1 minute on, 1 minute off. And the 1 minutes would be at 10K pace or faster. So for me, that was 256 or faster. And the 1 minute off would try to be steady. And that's, it's going to be a hard workout. If you look at like kind of the heart rate graph, your recoveries by the end, you're like, I'm not recovering. It feels like almost like a solid tempo effort, but it's that's one workout when you hit it, you're in good shape, but it sucks when you're at like minute 5 of 80 minutes of 1 minute on, 1 minute off.
I think I'll go back to the workout that I said I really did, but the 3 by 800 on an outdoor track in the summer, leading up to like a big race, you basically hit it as hard and as even as you possibly can. And it's like survival mode, pure lactic. Last summer, I just ran like 3 800 PBs in a row. I remember running a 2:11 in the workout, and I was like, okay, damn, this is, when it's going well, it feels so good. If it doesn't work, it's the worst thing in the world. If it works out well, it's great. And the recoveries, you basically are just lying on the track, and then you go for the next one, and you just hope that you're gonna like finish the damn thing. But it doesn't take too long. You get lots of recovery, but it's so freaking hard.
Okay, so our next question is from David. He asks, should the half marathon be in the Olympics?
That's interesting. I think cross country before half marathon. Yeah. Half marathon and I honestly think half marathon and 10K are fairly similar. Mm-hmm. I could see them actually moving the Olympic 10K to maybe a road race, or maybe they'll make maybe like there seems to be a trend in world athletics to kind of get rid of some of the longer distance events at the Diamond League stages and other stages. So potentially I could see something like maybe getting rid of that 10K and creating like a road race. Maybe it's 15K or something. Maybe it's something like that, and adding it to the Olympics, which I think would be pretty cool, because then, the half marathon would be nice, because then you'd get the, I guess, more people to the Olympics, because you're not going to probably double a marathon and a half marathon within a couple weeks span. And the 10K half would be a tough double too, so get more people there. But I think more likely if we see a road race event, we might see the end of the 10K on the track, which would be unfortunate, because it might be my favorite event actually to run. But I
would lose count of the number of laps, even with lap counters. What do you think, Julianne?
Yeah, I really haven't thought about that too much. I'm more of the mind, like there should be a 3K flat in the Olympics, my perspective. But a half marathon, I think cross country is more different. So in terms of like having a span of events, but the 10K to the marathon is a bit of a jump. But if you look at any distance, 5 doubles to 10, and the 1500 doubles to the 3K steeple. So it's hard to really put a measure on it that way. But I think it would be another event to have athletes come, but I think all our good marathoners are probably good half marathoners. So maybe a cross country would probably be most fitting.
All right, maybe I'll turn the question around on you to make it more interesting. Would you ever run a competitive half marathon or marathon? Is that something you've ever thought about? Chris is smiling.
Yeah, he's gonna be my coach later on, I think, and he's gonna coach me to my maybe mom marathon days. I'm gonna do everything I can to exhaust my speed, and then once I have no more speed, then I'll maybe move up. But I asked Chris today if he thinks I could run like a 32-minute 10K on the track, and we're not really confident about that yet. But the half and the full, I think, is a ways away. I want to use all the speed I can while I'm young.
I mean, if you asked a 2006 Melinda Elmore that question, I'm sure she would have said the exact same thing.
That's true.
And you never know.
Oh, I'm sure she would have said, hell no.
Yeah. And look at her now. She is incredible. She is one of my current day idols. Take the 70s and 80s out of it. Yeah. Melinda Elmore.
Yeah, she likes to race too. So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so We are short on time here, but I'll ask one final question. We talked a lot about cross country in this, and I love cross country. I think both of you like cross country. The first time and I've kind of been following the sport very, very closely for 3 years. And the first time I noticed Julianne Staehli was at the 2017 or 2018 Canadian Cross Country Championships. When the year Claire Sumner won, what year was that? 2017?
I went in 2013.
Yeah, but Claire Sumner won the 2017 Canadian cross country.
Yes.
And that had a big lead pack for a long time, that race. And it was like this New Balance kit, and I couldn't figure out who it was because I'd only been following it for so long. So can you both and then Chris, your team won the Canadian Cross Country Championship. So talk a little bit about cross country and why you like it so much and why more Canadians should do it, because I think we can all agree on that.
It's definitely, it's one of those seasons that, depending on where you're at in your career, and I think at the university level, it was the best because of the team aspect, and seeing the Queen's Gales win this previous season was awesome too. Post-collegiately, I have to say, I've kind of, I don't want to say let it go, but I think my focus is definitely indoor and outdoor season in terms of track. So I've never been able to do 3 seasons well. So if it's like indoor, outdoor cross, I think one always has to give a little bit. But for anyone considering, and it is one of those events, it's so cool to have a mass start and everyone goes together, and it's just a totally different environment. But National Cross Country Championships, AOs, are in Kingston this year, which is really special. Solid course. Yeah. So, and then these guys won last year. So it really has that cool team component to it. And I think it's one of those, if you're a distance athlete and you're kind of strong and gritty, and it favors all sorts of things. And it's kind of a different style of racing too, rather than just the fittest person winning. I think it's the person who runs smart and is ready on the day with any weather, and it just mixes it up a little bit.
And Chris, before I throw it to you, I watched your YouTube video of the victory, and I have to say there was more eating pizza and drinking than there was running. So I'm a little concerned about the quality of the other teams.
Well, if you knew our group, we're a little bit more beer and pizza than running in general. No, I think, so I guess I'm more of a road guy now. I don't really know what I am. I like racing everything, but I think everyone, front pack, mid pack, back of the pack, road racing, I think everyone should run cross country. It's such a cool experience. It's unique. It's fun. And let's throw away the distances and cross. Let's have courses. It's a cross race. If it's 9.2K, it's 9.2K, and let's just run it. And I think the people at its core, like that to me is running. And I think people kind of miss out on that because they register for their local 5K, they register for their local 10K, and they kind of have this progression that eventually gets up to marathon, let's say. And I think people I think more people should try to experience cross country, because it really encompasses to me everything that I don't know is so great about running. It's uneven surfaces, it's mud, it's wind, it's shoulder to shoulder running, and I think if we had maybe more kind of road races on cross country courses and really got the public into it, then it would do wonders for the sport, and I think people would really enjoy it, and it'd be awesome to see. Awesome. And then being said, our group winning the title was huge. That was something that we had in our goal from August on when we went for it, and we kind of knew that I was going to run the marathon, and I told the guys I booked my flight to Abbotsford well before the marathon. I said, it doesn't matter how I feel after this marathon, I'm racing in Abbey, and we put together, we had 10 guys there on our team, and that was just the most fun that you can have on a trip, and we really saw that as the end goal, and we're hoping that cross country goes on again, because we want to be able to defend that title in 2020 or 2021. Whenever we're racing, you can count on the Backroads Bandits and the London Western Track and Field Club being there to defend that title for as long as we can run.
Nice. Hopefully there will be more prize money next time. That's what we need in cross country. Anyway, any sponsor plugs, final, social media shout outs you want to do before we
guess New Balance. Been supporting Julianne for a long time, me for a couple of years now. London Western Track and Field Club, Backroads Bandits, Backroads Brews and Shoes. Anyone else?
Thanks to everyone for signing on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Western University for keeping us being able to have a runner lifestyle.
Nice.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, thanks so much for doing this. This was awesome. Awesome chat.
Yeah. No, thank you for having us on. Thanks for everyone for tuning in.